The story of Australia's First Peoples is the oldest continuing human story on Earth. This podcast series presents a collection of First Peoples voices, sharing their experiences, achievements, hopes and beliefs. These are the real stories of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Australia. Hi, I'm Mayra Sonta and you're listening to the Real podcast series. In this episode, I'm very excited to be chatting with singer-songwriter, actor and composer Marcus Corowa. Hello, Marcus.
Hi. What an introduction.
It's always important to introduce our guests, and it's also very important that you introduce yourself, I think, because it must feel weird being introduced in certain ways and how you perceive yourself as a bit different. Tell me how you would like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, I think ultimately I am a performer of Aboriginal and South Sea Islander descent, and I'm kind of crossing different performance skill sets at the moment. I came out as a singer-songwriter, but then it's starting to merge into other things. So I suppose that's who I am.
And it's been fascinating kind of watching your journey and super exciting from afar. We would have met so many years ago now.
Yeah.
Doing the Deadlies probably.
That's right.
7-8 years ago when you kind of just coming out with your first EP, performing at maybe the launch over at SBS there that time. I remember sitting in the back area and having a yarn with you that day.
Yep.
And now to see all that you've done all around the country, around the world, breaking out from, as you say, singer-songwriting and doing a lot of theatre work these days, but so many things. So congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah.
What did you think you wanted to be when you were a little boy?
I don't really know. I mean, music has always been a big part of my life, so I think at the end of the day I wanted to work with music in some capacity, but I'd never really had a full formalized dream of what that would look like.
And where did you grow up?
I grew up in a small town in North Queensland called Bowen, and I spent my childhood there. And I have a lot of fond memories. I always call myself a Bowen boy because I think that's where it all kind of started for me.
And for those who haven't been to Bowen, tell us about what it's
like.
like.
Bowen is like such a beautiful place. It's like right on the water. There's rivers and creeks, and it's quite like a small, humble place. I have a lot of family still there, Aboriginal and South Sea Islander family, and growing up there, it's just I was always surrounded by family, involved in the church. Church was a big part of my life. Music was a big part of my life. Pretty much everyone that I knew that was family could play an instrument or could sing, and so I grew up around these lovely harmonies and church songs and the creeks and rivers and going fishing every day. There's Bowen mangoes, climbing up the trees and just, it was really simple life.
It sounds idyllic to me. Just, what more do you need, really?
I know, what more do you need is seafood and mangoes, like really.
Actually, Jax was in our office yesterday. She was loving mangoes at the moment.
Yep, they're in season.
They're just going for it. So when did you first fall in love with music, do you think? Is there a memory in your childhood we went, I love this. This makes me feel good.
It was just a part of me, I think, because my dad played the guitar and sang. My grandfather did the same. So the guitar was always sitting around at home on the couch. So it wasn't uncommon for me to pick up the guitar and just try and have a tinkle and play, and then ask my dad like a couple of, how do you play this? How do you play that? And I would just play it. So it would always be there. I couldn't think of my life without music in that regards.
And has there ever been have you ever done any official training in music, or has it mostly been self-taught?
Yeah, mostly self-taught, even though I studied throughout just my normal schooling years from grade 5 to grade 12, I played the saxophone at school. So
didn't know that.
Well, yeah.
Can you still play
a rusty saxophone? Yeah. So I learned
we actually prepared one earlier.
No. There you go.
No. Yeah.
So and that's as far as my I suppose formal education in music goes.
And so you're at high school, you're, participating in music classes, but generally music is in your blood, in your family, been surrounded by you this entire time. What was the next step in the career that wasn't necessarily music?
Yeah, it was actually I went to Bible college because I was into church for a little while. So I went to Bible college for like a year. And then after that, I was like, I wanted to be a social worker or work in some kind of psychology, social worker, welfare aspect. So went to the University of Queensland for like 6 months. And then after that, I was like, actually don't have any money. So like I got a part-time job at Australia Post and ended up making that transition. Like I stopped doing uni. I went to Australia Post and I was just there like working part-time and ended up working full-time, and I was there for like 7.5 years.
Oh, wow, long time.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And I suppose, after 7.5 years, it was, those first couple of years were great because, I was young and it was like I had my independence. I could buy things and live and do all that kind of stuff. But then, towards the end of it, it was like, I don't know if sorting mail for the rest of my life is what I want to do. So I came to that crossroads, and from there it started to transition into finding my way into the music industry, and that's been a journey as well.
And it takes a lot of courage to kind of chase your dreams, really. You could have just stayed and you were, had a financially secure job,
right.
Living at home and feeling, on country, so you were happy in that kind of regard. But, I want to go and I want to pursue music in a totally different career, and that's probably going to take you elsewhere.
Yeah, but who knows where, and who knows even if that will work out. But at the end of the day, I had to follow. I had to make some really hard decisions about what I wanted to do because, as you said, like you have job security. It's like the you're in the system and you're kind of thinking, this is the way that life is supposed to work out. Get a full-time job, buy a car, buy a house. Stay there for 30 years, 40 years, and that's the people that I was working with. They were doing that. They were retiring, and it's like, I don't want to do this. And I was thinking like, it's 7.5 years. I got a couple more years to go before I have long service leave. I've got holiday pay, all those things, and then at the end of it, it was like, this is not what I want to be doing. So I had to ask myself some really hard questions. What is it? What is it that you want to do? And I kind of just came up with, well, one, I want to work with music in some kind of capacity, and two, I want to work with my mob. And that was really clear for me. That's what I wanted to do. At that time, I had met my girl as well, Shani. And
shout out to Shani.
Shout out to Shani. Yep, she's been there since day one. And she was going to the performing school, ACPA, Aboriginal Centre for the Performing Arts. And my sister was going there as well. And because at that time, I started just to get curious about this particular place, and I was kind of hanging around there for a little bit. And that's that kind of place. It kind of lent itself to that, even though young Indigenous students go there to learn as well. But it's also there's a sense of community, and people just drop in, drop out. So I was kind of hanging around there for a bit, and then one day I ended up at a barbecue at the artistic director's place, and I sang one of my songs for her. She's like, "Wow, you're actually really good, like amazing." And, basically we talked, and, I told her my situation, kind of floating, looking, I know this is where I'm at. Then a couple of days later, she was like, well, do you want to work here? Do you want a job here? I'm like, yeah. What will I be doing?
Yes.
I'm like, yes.
Before you ask what the job is.
Yeah. Because I was like just taken by the performative aspects here and what it represented, and when I thought about it, I was like, well, yeah, it's music and it's also with mob. So I was like, yep. And so I became a teacher's assistant for like the next 2 years. teaching like basic music skills, and just learning from the other teachers as well. And then 2 years there. My girl had finished her course, and that was my introduction into I don't know, I suppose the entertainment side of life and industry. And then fast forward 2 years later, my girl finishes the course, and she's like, so it's finished now, so I'm gonna move to Sydney. I don't know what you're gonna do.
It's a strong black woman for you. You coming or not?
Yeah, coming or not. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna pack up the house and pack up everything, and that was it. And just threw everything into my little Hyundai, and just made the trip to Sydney, and I arrived on Australia Day. And I remember like Yarbin was happening, but I didn't quite get to that. But in my mind, I was like, I'd love to perform there. This is, quite significant. And and the rest has been history, and that's how it all basically started for me.
I always admire people who can get up and move cities and just totally follow their dreams and, start anew in different places. It can be quite frightening, but it was kind of it was going to be your future, really. You've had to pick up and move around, and the gigging lifestyle of, here's a project for 3 months, you need to go and live in Perth, or you need to go and live in Melbourne, or I want you to tour around Europe for the next 3 months. So getting used to that new kind of lifestyle would have been...
Yeah, that's right, because I come from a family who's like, from a small town community, and people stay there and do their thing. So it's like... To think outside of your community is sometimes scary, and there's a lot of unknowns. And but I had Shani there, and I think I was at a place where I was like, well, I've got nothing to lose, and this is what I want to do. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how it's going to work out, but just do it.
And who were your role models at the time?
Well, I've got just a lot of local heroes. Like I just because I just remember growing up with family and that, and everyone could play instruments. So it's like, Uncle Eddie could play the lap guitar, and Uncle, such play the drums, and so it's like, I was inspired by all these black men that could do these things, and and that was very much in my foresight, I suppose. But like when I came to Sydney here and started to, land some things, I remember going on tour like for the first time doing my music, and I was doing support for Christina Nue. So she was doing her Aretha Franklin tour in a couple of small towns in regional New South Wales, and I got asked to do a support and also like to back up sing for her. And I remember like doing that, and I just thought, this was like it was really great. It was like a bit of a turning moment for me in terms of this is the direction that I want to go. And she really was really helpful, and I really admire her and kind of look up to her, because like she's been around forever doing a whole bunch of stuff, and I kind of look at her career and like, I think that's fantastic, and I can learn a lot from what she's been through.
And you share a manager too.
Yeah.
So that kind of helps to kind of learn
helps
from behind the scenes and how to kind of navigate this industry, which is there's no direct path. You never know what project's going to pop up next, or if it's suited to you, or how do you kind of navigate that process?
In terms of what?
In terms of knowing what projects to go for next, or how to, what are you doing in 6 months? You might not know.
Oh, for myself? Yeah. It's a bit like that. It totally is. It's all up in the air, and it's one, guided by, what I want to do as an artist, and two, I suppose the opportunities that present itself, and then you kind of just make decisions on which way is the best way to go. So, there's a lot of work in being a self-independent artist and trying to make things happen. And then sometimes you land a gig, and it's a little bit easier in terms of the logistics, and you just rock up and do the thing. So it's a bit of both.
I'm lucky enough to have seen you perform outdoors around Uluru. Actually, you did a bit of time up there. I'm not sure if it's for the Chungu Festival or something around that kind of time. And how lucky to be able to travel, right around the world, but particularly in our own backyard and see some of those amazing places.
Yeah, 100%. I remember like seeing you there and meeting you, and then I think I was telling you the story about one of my first times out at Uluru. I got to play at Sails in the Desert and do a month's residency, and that came off the back of I think winning the Deadly Award, which you're very much a part of, and so. Yeah, I think, having that recognition of winning a Deadly Award, and then that was kind of a bit of a launching pad as well into the next phase of my career. And yeah, one of my first gigs on the back of that was to perform at the Sails in the Desert. And and as you've said, like I've done a lot of gigs around the world and done so much. There's so many things and so many just random spontaneous trips that just come out of the blue.
Now, how did you get into the theatre piece? What was your first kind of footstep into that world, which has just, snowballed? You've done so many great things in such a short space of time since then. What was the first theatre piece that you worked on?
Yeah, it was The Rabbits, and that was a new work from Kate Miller-Heidke, and it was produced by Opera Australia. And it was... a new work based on the book The Rabbits, a children's book. It's about colonization, and so I got asked. I went for it, and I got the part in it. And it's a little bit like Lion King. We have to dress up with the whole costume, with the whole headpiece and everything like that. In terms of the costume, and then that was my first introduction into. I suppose a musical. Well, I think they classed it as a children's opera, but I was running around the stage dressed in this kind of marsupial outfit, and got to do the tour for that. So that was incredible.
And did you think that you would be able to do live theatre?
Yes and no. Like it's a different skill set. And I'm used to being the person behind the guitar, sharing my songs. And then, it's once, you put the guitar down, sometimes you can use the guitar as a bit of a, it kind of covers things. But
bit of a safety net?
Bit of a safety net, yeah, exactly. And you put the guitar down and then you're there standing and it's like, okay, this is something different. So... yes and no. Like I was curious about it, and so like with anything, like if I'm curious, I'll just jump in and have a go and see if it works or not, and then see how this feels, if I can do it or not. And it's I'm enjoying it at the moment.
And we talked before we came online, and just about winning the role in Beautiful, the Carole King musical.
Yeah. And
you just going, I'm not sure that's suited to me, or I don't know that I could do that, and you were quite scared of not the singing, because we know that you're very comfortable in that singing space, but the choreography piece.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, like when the audition came around and like the role was for one of the drifters, and like I gravitate to that kind of music. So yeah, the singing was okay. I felt, and they enjoyed it. But it was, I've never danced before in my entire life, so I've never done choreography. I dance around at home, maybe. Dance around in the club or something.
And the club dancing, that's my experience.
And then you have to put it all together in this, in this piece, and you have to sing on top of that. But the creatives that I was working with were very generous, and I think I did enough. Obviously, I did enough through the audition to say for them to be like, oh, if we can work with this guy. And that's what we did. So like literally before Beautiful rehearsal started, we had a 2-week boot camp where I just got like the basics of all the steps, putting it all down, and learning the routine before we actually started rehearsal. And I got there at the end. Yeah. And
you've just come back from New York, where you got to see the New York version.
Yes, that's right. So I was on holidays over there. I just literally got back into the country now, and that particular show has been on Broadway for like the last 6 years, and it's just closing. It's just finished closing a couple of days ago. So I was lucky enough to go and see it. And I'd been performing it for the year, but I'd never seen it as an audience member, and that was really something as well, to be like, oh, okay, this is what we create every single night, and it's quite special. So that was something.
Would you like to do some work in the US?
I think so, yeah, definitely. Like, I feel like if I could do, like, basically a role that has been on Broadway for the last 6 years, like, well, yeah, that's kind of opened my eyes and my mind to be like, well, maybe I can go over there and do a musical. So,
and isn't New York a magical city?
It's intense and it's amazing. It was really overwhelming. And there's just everything and anything that's happening over there, and it kind of blew my mind to see. It's a place where, like, the biggest and the best things happen, and really, like, a place where dreams do come true. So yeah, it was really inspiring.
I certainly feel like that when I go to New York too, but I'm just a bit over how hectic it is, to be honest.
100%,
it's full on, isn't it? Just
on.
Exhausting, but exciting at the same time.
Yes.
So, well, fingers crossed, we believe in you. And if you go to New York, we'll come and watch. How about that? Put that on the business. We have to come and do a follow-up podcast backstage.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at the moment, I know that you're working with the Alex Park Community School. Can you tell, and you mentioned at the beginning of our interview that it's all about, wanting to work with music and mob. And so it's great that you've come back from, a European tour and a holiday overseas, and are now working just around the corner with our kids.
Yeah, and I really feel passionate about, like, always working with kids and giving back, because I was that kid, like, trying to figure out, make sense of your place in the world and your identity and your dreams and your passions and what that is all about. So, anytime I can get an opportunity to work with kids, I do that. So I have this opportunity at the moment working with this particular school, and it's basically empowerment through music. And it's quite relaxed and informal, but it's just about confidence building, and we look at some issues about identity and believing in yourself. So loving that at the moment.
And how is that, kind of having conversations about identity? I suppose. Sorry, you can answer.
No, yeah, I think we've already come a long way in terms of our in society and the way that we look at it. So I think, like, having these conversations now, as opposed to, like, years ago, it's a little bit more accepted and a bit easier to have. And I find that these kids are really open and receptive, and they get it anyway, I think, with just social media and just what they've been exposed to already. So those conversations have been fine.
And so is the conversation around identity around being an Aboriginal person and how you deal with that in society or online at the same time? How do those kind of conversations go? Yeah,
it's about just trying to understand who they are, where they fit, and some kids are really strong about that. Some kids are still trying to work that out. And basically, it's just creating an environment for them to express themselves and whatever they want to say and however they want to think.
I imagine that must be tricky not tricky, just different for your line of work. You've played an African American guy, in Beautiful the musical, and obviously Aboriginal characters as well. But it's something you'd probably have to think through, process yourself before you potentially take on roles. Would there be roles that you wouldn't take on for, that might clash too much with your identity?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've been really fortunate enough to the roles that I've had, or the projects that I've been involved in, have really resonated with me, and that's, I don't know, that all has just come naturally. So I'm not the type of person to, like, the actor or the musical theatre person to be, like, wanting to be a part of everything. It's just kind of worked out that I felt like those particular projects or roles have, like, found me in a way, which has been great. So, and, also with anything, and being a black fella in this space is like, and you always have to try and question. I feel I always have to try and question, the cultural integrity of the piece or the role before I get into it. So that's really important to me.
And I imagine during the creative process too, there would probably be some of those conversations.
Yeah, yep.
And talking about that, Bran Nue Dae just announced.
Yeah.
Very exciting.
I know.
Tell us about it.
It's a little bit crazy because it hasn't officially started yet. Like the rehearsals will start on the 2nd of December in Broome. And so I'm really looking forward to that and getting my teeth stuck into that. But yeah, once again, like the audition process happened a couple of months ago. I originally went for the role of Uncle. So I was in there, had prepared, and then they started to throw young Willie at me. So I kind of learnt that stuff on the fly, and got in there and did my stuff. And I just walked out of there thinking, this is weird because, one, I felt like I'm too young to play Uncle and then too old to play Willie. And I kind of just left it and didn't think about it. And then a couple of weeks later, I got offered the role of Willie, which I was like, oh, okay, this is happening. This is great. And so it was something that I wasn't really expecting, but once again, like, I'm accepting it and I'm happy to be a part of this. It's going to be massive. And no, I'm really looking forward to getting into it.
And tell me about the audition process.
Yeah,
I find it fascinating. Are they always a little bit different, or do you sing a song or deliver a piece of monologue? Or tell us about it.
The audition process is they give you a brief of what to prepare. So you can either usually songs or a scene. You have to learn a script, but at the same time you do that, you get in there. You don't know what to expect because sometimes they can cut you and like cut a song that you've prepared, and you just got to be ready to do whatever they say in the moment, which is nerve-wracking. You've prepared and you're there doing your thing, and then you just got to leave it and just wait and see if you get the role or not.
It's a good kind of process as an artist, I'd imagine. You have to be quite resilient, obviously, but also just flexible and light on your feet and be able to transition in the moment to go, well, that's not for me, but this one is. And you kind of sounds like you just trust in the process and that the projects that you're drawn to find you at the same time.
Yeah, I've been a little bit fortunate in that regards. My journey, that's my journey, but it's not the journey for everyone. And you do. You have to be resilient and you have to persevere and you have to love what you're doing and what you're about at the end of the day, to make it work for you. Otherwise, it is, if you don't have that kind of mindset, it's quite jarring and you probably won't get that far. So you do have to be quite flexible.
And so what other goals do you have in the future?
I would just like to continue just challenging myself and growing. And I think at the core of me is, once again, is music and my mob. And I want to see, and we've got stories to tell, and I'm an advocate for our stories and advocate for, positive, our mob being positive role models and making a change within the system. So, that's the core of me. And then at the same time, I'm really curious and about acting and musicals, and I don't know. I just think you got to have some core stuff about you, and then that kind of guides you and leads you. But I think at the end of the day, if you stay curious, stay passionate about something, and you kind of let that guide you as well, and then who knows, Mara? Who knows?
It's such an exciting lifestyle because you don't even know what you're doing in 6 months, really, do you? But you've got this beautiful body of work behind you that means so much and that has been, so well accepted by the community, but by, critics at the same time. And it just must make you feel really proud.
Yeah. And as as you said before, I won the Deadly Award, and that was a big moment for me as well, to be like everything that I've gone through. Like, I mean, to say that I want to go and do music and put my music out there, and then to get an award, to, I don't know, and almost to validate, my path. But in saying that, it's great to get awards and to have that platform. But at the end of the day, it's not about getting the awards. It's about following your path.
And that's what we kind of believe at The Real, and I suppose it's an extension of kind of the Deadlies. It's celebrating Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander success, because if we're not going to shout from the rooftops how great we are and all the amazing things that we're doing and back each other
100%.
in this space, then who's going to do it?
100%.
So we're grateful that you mentioned the Deadlies and that kind of profile that's kind of given you some support on your journey, which has absolutely been down to you and your success and talent and drive. Can you share with us, just in wrapping up, some advice to some young people who might be listening to this and thinking that they're not sure where they want to go with their lives? Just some advice on life in general.
Yes, I think this might sound a bit controversial, but I'm a big believer in not necessarily having an education at the end of the day. I think the biggest thing for me is finding your passion, finding what your strengths are, finding what you're good at, and what excites you the most, and you let those things lead you and guide you along the way. And when you find out those things and those things that make you happy, just follow that, trust that, and your gut will tell you as well. So I think that's probably the best advice that I could give anyone.
Well, thank you for that advice and for having a chat with us on The Real today. We look forward to continuing to follow your journey and see you in Bran Nue Dae coming up very soon, but hopefully on Broadway very soon. You've been listening to The Real podcast series. The Real is an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander digital media platform produced by 33 Creative. This episode was recorded in Sydney on Gadigal country. Produced by Jake Keane and Marguerite Barbara. Music production by Jimbler. For more stories and podcasts, visit the-real.com.au/podcast.